What's up, y'all? It's your boy Sean P back again with another edition of Hip Hop Roundtable Reviews. Hope y'all are enjoying your Juneteenth holiday. If you celebrated it yesterday or today, like I am, as I'm off of work today for that holiday. So, we've got a bit of controversy once again surrounding Jim Jones. Jim Jones is doing his, I guess, annual media tour where he just has to open his mouth and put his opinions out there about hip hop. I mean, we've seen this track record. This somewhat has led to a mini skirmish with him and Pusha-T 2 years ago off of the Billboard 50 MCs list, where he didn't think Pusha T belonged there. And of course, he had to go ahead and put out his attributes of what he did for hip hop. And of course, now with clips coming back and the Pusha T being back in the news, of course, after dissing Travis Scott and all of that, Jim Jones has to give and has given his opinion that he doesn't think that the clip single is all that, and he doesn't really believe Pusha T. But Pusha T aside, we've also had another debate come up, which I previously posted on Hip Hop Roundtable Reviews, about a young under 25 hip hop fan who thinks that Jim Jones' influence on hip hop is greater than that of Nas. And now I posted that video. Definitely check that out to see what the opinions are on that. However, it's taken a step further now. Jim Jones recently went on the Fat Joe and Jadakiss podcast, which if you haven't, definitely check that out. If you're a hip hop head, that podcast is definitely for you. Fat Joe and Jadakiss, shout out to them. And they brought that topic up. So Jim Jones now has a chance to provide his comments as to how he feels about what that young gentleman said about him and his influence on hip hop. He brought up some points, but he goes into a little bit more detail where I don't know he wants to really go off the deep end as far as his place in hip hop history and comparing himself against certain MCs. So what we're going to do is we're going to pull that video up, and then we're going to actually address what Jim Jones is calling out in the video, and we're going to compare him to some other notable MCs to really show where is Jim Jones' place really in hip hop overall. And is Jim Jones really a great hip hop artist that doesn't get enough respect? Is it more about his image or his style that sells him? Or is he overrated? You know what I mean? So we're going to pull up the quote unquote facts, and we're going to really take a look at that. Okay? Facts according to him, anyway. So let's start with the Fat Joe and Jadakiss. Let's start with that and what they had to say on the subject real quick.
Saw a clip on the Instagram where a young kid was comparing you to Nas and saying that you got
that's my young boy.
big hits.
Wow.
Yo, he looked to you. He learned how to wear the BB Simon belt from you. He got his swag. Like, how crazy is that? Because in my era, you know what I'm saying, Nas is like a god.
In my era too. I mean,
so to be compared,
let me
that young kid out.
Let me.
He was young, and we loved that he loved Jim Jones. I want you to break this down.
Let's break this down. I admired Nas, but remember Nas' first record, The Barbecue, came out when I was in 11th grade. So Nas was my idol when I was young. Like you did, came to dressing, the wordplay, the music, everything. I was a superior Nas fan.
So I just want to stop it right there. as far as what Jim is saying. And Jim's kind of supporting what I said in my previous video addressing that young 22-year-old hip hop fan about influence, you know. So, you know, that kind of, and see, this is the thing you got to understand. Like, if, you know, the people that you look up to have influence, you know what I mean? You got to pay homage to the ones that really had the influence. And Jim is actually acknowledging, look, Nas influenced me from his dress, from his music, from his style. You know what I mean? So it's like, it goes back to showing to that previous video how ignorant that young hip hop fan is, because you're not doing your research as to where does the influence really come from. Because if your influence really comes from another guy that you don't really pay attention to, you know what I mean? When the guy that you actually look up to admires and puts on that pedestal, you know, what's it really about? You know what I mean? In the end of the day, I mean, you have to pay homage to those that originally came with that style. And like I said, Nas had a style back at that time about half moon fades, Avericks jackets. It's that style of hip hop, that New York gritty Queen style of hip hop that influenced Jim Jones. So, I mean, influence can be looked at in so many different ways, in so many different contexts. And just to look at it in a one-dimensional context is not the right way to do that. And Jim Jones actually acknowledges that. So back to the video.
Period. I'd never take that away from him. But then as I got in the game, you got to realize that your rivals would be idols, and not to take anything away from that. I developed my own style and my own lane that these kids start to gravitate towards the same way I gravitated towards Nas when I was younger and things like that. It's a whole different generation. We talking about 94, 93. I was in 11th grade. Nigga, it's 2025. There's a big gap there, you know what I mean? And I want people to understand that. So when Shorty's telling people that, yeah, he's 20-some years old, that goes to show the part of the era that he's in, that I came into light and started going crazy, that these kids love me. They don't really know who Nas is. If he's 22, he's born in 03.
Not all of them, some of them know. But
no.
Yeah, so, I mean, and see, this is the point, right? And Jadakiss is about to make a point on this about, you know, how, I mean, your idols become your rivals, but the generation gap really in hip hop. And I noticed this the most specifically with hip hop fans, because when it comes to rock fans, and, you know, a lot of my friends who really into rock music, you know, they will pay homage to, you know, Led Zeppelin, the Beatles, I don't know, Bon Jovi, and those type of artists that, I mean, their heyday was almost 50, 40 years ago. You know what I mean? But they still listen to the modern day rock today. You know what I mean? The modern day rock acts. Whatchamacallit? Jadakiss is about to make an example about that too. And I noticed in hip hop, they're the only like generationally, if there's a word I could use, like they're the only generationally challenged music genre where it's only what the music that they put out for their era matters. Everything after that is cool. You know, they don't really pay attention to. So, I mean, just the fact that you have a 23-year or a 14-year age gap, to me, is not really an excuse as far as you actually, you know, paying homage and doing your research as to, all right, who really were the people that really molded people's styles and molded the music up today. And see, that's the thing about modern day hip hop fans that I do have an issue with, is especially the younger ones. You know what I mean? Like me, myself, like even though Rakim and KRS was before me, I still paid homage to them. Rakim's in my top 5, even though he wasn't my generation. You know what I mean? But I still see the influence from Rakim and what he's done, and how he's molded Nas into, one of the greatest of all time. So you got to pay that respect, and that's a real big issue with today's modern day under 25 hip hop fan that they don't do. They look at the age gap, generation gap, and it's nothing that they have grown up on. You know what I mean? If they didn't grow up on it, it's almost as if it doesn't matter. So that's an interesting point that Jim Jones brings up. Let's get back
I
to
mean,
A
it.
lot of them though.
Yes.
but
Yeah,
it's the era.
some music.
No,
There's some kids that.
no, I love that.
There's some
for you.
kids that love
My
hip
son's
hop,
20, so I mean,
but he's your son.
He's your son.
You know?
He's your son.
No, but he knows.
My son,
they know about
my
Nas.
son can't tell
but-
you one Nas record. You heard? Like, let's keep it a buck here.
Yeah, but
like, let's keep it a buck. You heard? Let's keep it a buck because you'll bring it up.
And see, that goes back to what I was saying. Now, the younger generation as to knowing one Nas record, I think that's debatable. You know what I mean? Because Nas still has songs that get played on commercials. I mean, If I Rule the World still gets radio play on Hot 97. So you're going to hear Nas records. You're going to hear Hate Me Now. You're going to hear Nas. So I doubt it that the majority of 23-year-olds don't know any Nas records. I think Jim is just speaking specifically to his son. I know Jada Kiss's son obviously knows Nas records or whatever. So that right there is very subjective, what he's coming with. Because Nas still gets play on Hot 97 on a regular basis today. So does Jay-Z. You know what I mean? So does Tupac. So does Biggie. So, but do those 23-year-olds gravitate to those type of records? If I Rule the World, Hate Me Now, One Mic, that might get radio play still as a classic record. That's the key question. Do they like that? You know what I mean? And of course, Nas had the Hit Boy run. Nas had radio play with some of the Hit Boy songs, but those aren't mega hits. You know what I mean? Those are more albums that got critical acclaim and won Nas a Grammy. You know what I mean? Which may get him some notoriety, but more notoriety with the real music listeners and more mature hip hop fans. So that's where kind of the gray area would. But I think saying it's kind of a reach to say, oh, well, 23-year-olds don't know any Nas records. I think that's a bit of a stretch. You know what I mean? So let's keep going.
There must be some type of misconception or what's that word when it comes to Jim Jones and what Jim Jones have done in this game. A lot of these rappers,
We made them take the darkies off.
a lot of these rappers have done a tremendous job, and I take nothing away from them. But they forget I got a hell of a catalog. Me, Jim Jones, myself, gold records, platinum records, gold albums, platinum albums. No, me, Jim Jones. No diplomats, no nobody else. Me, Jim Jones. Check my track record, then check everybody else's track record. Then go to the billboards and check all my entries, then check all them niggas' entries and shit like that. And I'm not taking nothing away from nobody, but I hear the comparisons and the niggas be trying to act funny when it comes. No, I've been spanking a lot of this shit. I'm talking about the industry. I've been putting on. So let's not get into that where we get into numbers and I got to show you the statistics of what I've done. You heard to what other people was done. You heard them. You want to go to the billboard entries, pull up Nas billboard entries, then pull up my billboard entries.
Listen, we can't compare the two.
Okay.
What?
We're going to stop it there for now because we're actually going to go to the scorecard here, okay? So here goes Jim Jones. Now, here's my thing. I think as an MC and a rapper, he has a right to defend his catalog and defend the work he's put in. Just as a disclaimer, I do like Jim Jones as a rapper. He has a very solid catalog. I like his energy. I like his street feel. You know, he has a great street feel as far as a street rapper is concerned. And he has a couple of bangers. You know what I mean? Especially with Dipset. You know what I mean? I do respect Jim Jones as an MC. Now, where he thinks he is and where the majority of hip hop fans and his place in hip hop history, I think that's where the issue lies. Because I do think the man does overrate himself. He definitely does. He thinks he's a lot better than he really is. And see, that's the problem with Jim Jones is when he comes at these guys, and mind you, in the 2000s, he did come at Jay-Z. He did come at Nas. He came back at Pusha T, and he's called out some other rappers too. I think there was a little, he made a comment about Styles P recently. But if we're really going to put into context, and he said, listen, you wanted to say, pull up the Billboard entries, okay? Pull up the scorecard and put my record next to other people's records. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to do that. We're going to actually acknowledge, Jimmy, this is what you wanted. This is what you asked for. And you say, pull it up against other notable MCs and pull up against Nas. So let's get started here, okay? So this is what we're going to do. Let's pull up Jim Jones chart history, okay? So if you can see, he only has 2 songs. One top 10 hit, which is We Fly High Ballin', which that's a great record, and also Pop Champagne. Now, here's the thing about Pop Champagne. That was really Ron Brow's record. That was not his record, but okay, I'll give you credit for that. You know what I'm saying? But you only have 2 entries in here. And he brought up an interesting point too. You know what I mean? He brought up an interesting point. He said, oh, just me, I don't want to put in diplomats and all that other stuff. Well, you know what? I'll give you credit for what you've done with the Dipset and diplomats and all of that. And I would actually add that in. You know what I mean? But here's the thing. He doesn't have any Billboard hits with the Diplomats. Diplomats have not charted in the top 100. Okay. Now, just to let you know, and the Diplomatic Immunity is a borderline classic album, but they didn't even chart any records off of that. So this is all Jim Jones really has to show for it. So he has 2 songs or whatever, but I'll give you credit for 3 because whatchamacallit, Ballin' was probably a top 100 hit as well. It probably stayed on the charts a little bit, you know what I mean? So all right, whatever, you know what I mean? That's that, you know what I mean? So that's all Jim Jones really has to speak of, okay? That's more of a one-hit wonder. You know what I mean? That's really more of a one-hit wonder we're talking about. So, all right, you said you wanted to compare this against Nas, right? So let's pull up Nas and let's put up his Billboard chart history. You called it out, you wanted it, you're going to get it. Okay, so Nas has 27 songs on here and 2 top 10 hits. You know what I mean? 27 songs. If I Rule the World, Uchiwali, I Can was a big record for him. I mean, they're all here. This is all that's here, right? So 27 hits, right? 2 top 10 hits versus 2 songs for Jim Jones. You tell me who wins that debate. You wanted to pull up and compare against Nas. Bro, Nas smokes you damn near at damn near 4-1. Okay? he smokes you, bro. You're not even 10% of his Billboard catalog, and you wanted to point that out. I'm gonna do some more research. I'll pull up some more research on these two. Nas has 10 gold albums, 8 platinum albums, and 3 multi-platinum albums. Jim Jones has 1 gold album to speak of. That's POME. Okay. And that's the one with Ballin', We Fly High on there. And 1 platinum song. That's Ballin', We Fly High. So in the end of the day, Jim Jones, you're really more exposing yourself as a one-hit wonder if you really want to get into the catalog debate. You know what I mean? And the Billboard hits and the notable songs out there. Now, again, this is Billboard Top 100. Now, what that means is if you're in the Billboard Top 100, you get radio play. Those are the songs that get played on the radio on a consistent basis to show that your music really matters. People want to hear your records, okay? So Nas smokes him 27-2 as far as those songs is concerned. That's just to let you know where that stands, okay? So Jim Jones, you wanted this, you asked for it, and you officially got debunked, bro. Nas smokes your catalog. It's not even funny. And I even went into the album sales, and I'm not even big on the record sales guy. And I'm not even really the record sales guy like that. But they both sold records when people actually went out and bought CDs. So this is not really like streaming skewed or anything. Nas smokes you, dude. I mean, 10 gold albums to 1 gold album. You don't have any platinum albums. Nas has 8, and he has 3 multi-platinum albums. So you tell me. But you know what? I'm not even going to stop there. Since this rivalry, perceived rivalry from Jim Jones with Pusha T has come back into fold, you know, with Pusha T and the Clips, you know, having to roll out for their album, Ace Trumpets coming out, So Be It coming out, and the energy behind that. Jim Jones had a lot of smart things to say about that, saying that, you know, those songs really aren't all that. You don't think those songs are good, but he respects their craft and whatnot. He doesn't really believe Pusha T, but that's not for he doesn't want to tear down another man or whatever. You know, backhanded compliment after backhanded compliment. We get it. So let's pull up Pusha T's Billboard catalog history. And again, I included, you know, Dipset, you know, which didn't have anything. So of course I'm going to include Clips. We're going to include everything. I think that you should include everything an artist does and his whole catalog as a whole to really compare. So let's pull up Pusha T's chart history now, okay? So back to Pusha T now. All right, so Pusha T has 14 songs in the Billboard Top 100, okay? Some of the songs from, you know, Daytona, Infrared's on there, The Games We Play. Also, some of his notable songs like Mercy, Don't Like, you know what I mean? Some of those songs are on here. Did Don't Like make it? Hold on. That should be on there. From his Good Music run, you know what I mean? Obviously. So he has 14 songs compared to Jim Jones, who only has 2, okay? In the Billboard Top 100. So that's 14-2. But we're not done with Pusha T. We're not done with Pusha T. Of course, we're going to have to add in, you know, what he's done with the Clips. You know what I mean? Because this is everything. We added in everything for Jim Jones and the Diplomats and Dipset. So we're going to have to add in for the Clips. And he has another 5 songs on Billboard. And of course, they're landmark hit Grinding, you know what I mean? And his run with Pharrell early in their career off of their first couple of albums that they had with Pharrell. I only think whatchamacallit, I only think it's mostly off of that Clip's debut album, Lord Willin', which is a borderline classic. But that's another debate for another day. So altogether, Pusha T has 19 top 100 Billboard entries. Okay. And Jim Jones only has 2. So this is the guy that you're questioning, oh, does he belong in the top 50 or whatever? And my track record, I have more bangers than him. Nah, bro. You kind of got exposed by this. I'm sorry to say. You're kind of exposed as a one-hit wonder. Now, again, I like Jim Jones. You know what I mean? I like his catalog. He has a very solid catalog. You know what I mean? But he's not on the level of Nas. He's not on the level of Pusha T. And I'm not even including Pusha T's critical acclaim because he's got Grammy nominations. Daytona is a borderline. Daytona is a classic album, classic hip hop album by many. You know what I mean? So, in the end of the day, what does Jim Jones really have to show for than just being a mouth speaking his opinion? And I mean, if I really want to go there, I mean, Jimmy, like, real talk, you were on Love and Hip Hop, bro. Love and Hip Hop are where hip hop stars go to beg for a check. You know what I mean? He begged for a check on Love and Hip Hop. He's on several seasons of Love and Hip Hop. It's not like the guy was really, on there one season to kind of get out and reignite his career. No. You know what I mean? So, I mean, you a Love and Hip Hop guy, like, you're calling out MCs above your caliber, saying you got a Billboard history to rival that. I'm sorry, bro. We don't see it. We don't believe you. You need more people, like, in the end of the day. So it's like, really, what's it going to be? Now, here's something to think about. Who is more comparable to Jim Jones? You know what I mean? Who is more comparable to Jim Jones? And I would say maybe a Memphis Bleak, maybe, who had a little run in the late 90s. I would say Noriega, you know what I mean? Because I think they have similar energies as far as like the energy they put behind the record or whatever. But I would even say Noriega, that might be disrespecting Noriega, because if we're going ahead and we're going to include all of Noriega's catalog, War Report with Capone and Noriega is a classic. I think NORE, which is Nori's debut album, is better than any Jim Jones album that he's put out. I like POME and I like Diary of a Summer. I think that's his first album. Diary of a Summer might actually be a little bit better. That's actually not on the level of NORE. NORE is fine. And I've been critical of Noriega. I think Noriega is a little bit overrated, but compared to that, I think he's better than Jim Jones. I mean, if we're talking about Fat Joe, I think Fat Joe has a better catalog than him. I would take Lean Back, who had a bigger, I would say Lean Back had a bigger impact than Ballin'. Ballin' had a run for maybe that year, maybe a couple months, because I lived in New York at that time. But Lean Back still gets consistent play in clubs. Like, I will hear Lean Back from Fat Joe, before I hear Ballin', We Fly High. You know what I mean? In a club, definitely in the New York City, New York metro area. So really, in the end of the day, Jim, you're reaching, bro. You're reaching big time on this one. Now, back to Pusha T. What I will say is, I do think Jim's response to Pusha T was one worthy of a response. I think Pusha T should respond to him on this. Will Pusha T do that? I don't know. But if Pusha T doesn't, all right, you could give a check to Jimmy on that one. You know, Pusha T maybe overlooked you or whatever, but you by no means are on Pusha T's level. You know what I mean? But I do think Pusha T should respond to him. I'll go on record as saying that. You know what I mean? But Jim Jones, he just got caught reaching on this one, man. I don't see where he's really at. You know what I mean? As far as what these guys are saying. Now let's continue on a little bit with the debate. I'll share a little bit more of the video and play it.
I'm trying to tell you.
No, I want to go there.
Hold on.
No, I want to go down the line now because now we going down the line. He's a rapper and I'm a rapper.
Listen,
No, let's go statistically.
It feels great.
No, but I want to go statistically because because when people be like,
I feel the same way. We all feel the same way.
Forget about the numbers. My numbers back up.
Let me step up to the forefront. Us in the music of hip hop culture have a problem. Is a thing, and there's nothing. The world goes off numbers, but in hip hop, we don't pay enough homage to those before us the correct way.
And see, this goes back to what I was talking about. Like Jimmy goes off the rails, and Jadakiss and Fat Joe kind of try to bring him back in line. You know what I mean? But obviously, I just pulled up the stats. Jimmy got exposed on this one because your numbers do not compare to anybody's numbers, including the two men that you're interviewing with now. You're not interviewing on that interview. Jadakiss numbers and Fat Joe dwarf your numbers as well. You know what I mean? You kind of got exposed as a one-hit wonder. But now the Jadakiss's comment about paying homage, that's the thing. And it's back to what I was saying earlier. The younger generation has an issue with paying homage. And where does that come from? You know what I mean? I think that comes from the social media age, where whatever is put in their face on social media, they go as their Bible. They don't go and read any other books. They don't read hip hop publications. They don't really listen to the radio. They may listen to the radio or hear if songs are on the radio. I think it's caused of the tunnel vision caused from social media and the social media era. But anyway, let's get back to because Jada brings up another point that's pretty interesting.
Sometimes it's even myself. So it gets no other genre of music fucking, I don't even know who to use.
Yeah, but you gotta understand, hip hop is like basketball.
Jelly Roll's never gonna say that about
hip hop is like basketball. John Morant get on the court with LeBron. He going to kill LeBron. So this is what this is about.
Song, any of that shit is murder.
This is what this is about. There's nothing that could. There's never is me. You putting me up against anybody. I'm taking me every time. Every time.
Okay, but let me say something though, Jim.
In every category, Jim, I get busy.
You started off saying you grew up watching Nas. The only problem,
I didn't take that away from
the only situation I'm saying now to you, right? There is no situation.
I always tell people
kids should worship you.
You fucking started.
No, I'm not doing this. I did not know it was going there.
Because you're really friends with him.
He gonna be mad at you.
Not me. I don't know.
I recently.
Okay, I'm gonna stop it there. So there's a lot going on in that debate. You know, a lot of headstrong New York MCs going at it. But back to Jim Jones' point, and he tries to narrative switch a little bit at this. Basically, if you're an MC, you're never supposed to think another man is better than you. That's the type of energy you're supposed to have. He brings up the Ja Morant versus LeBron analogy. You know what I mean? And of course, when you're in the heat of the game and in the battle, you're supposed to. Ja Morant's going is like, look, I don't care if it's LeBron. I'm going to go off for 30, 35 regardless. I'm going to go at him like, you know, that's competitive spirit you're bringing up. That's not actually, you could have competitive spirit and still have respect. Because if you pull Ja Morant aside and say, I mean, do you think you're in the category of LeBron James? Do you think that your career rivals LeBron James? Of course he'd say, nah, I'm not there. I mean, LeBron, I mean, he's got 4 titles, six MVPs, all of that. I haven't got to that stage yet. But, you know, Ja will probably go ahead and say, I aspire to get to that level. And that's why every time I see LeBron on the court, I'm trying to take his head off. That's what he's supposed to say. You know what I mean? That's competitive spirit. And Jim's trying to make that about competitive spirit versus what it actually is, where it's like you want to half kind of give credit as Nas is your idol, but then you want to say and put out a false narrative that you actually compare with him on Billboard. You know what I'm saying? So it's like you're going around in circles, Jimmy. And I think what this is really, you really see Jim's ego take over him, and he can't hold back. He can't separate, okay, what's actually reality here and what's my ego talking and my competitive spirit. And Jada and Fat Joe are trying to reel him back in, like, bro, come on, you're not comparing to Nas. Let's just get it out there. But he's not backing down. So it's like you could see that inner struggle with Jim Jones on this, where he wants to like give backhanded compliments to Nas that he's actually his idol, but really I'm better than you in Billboard when you're really not. And lastly, they kind of cut it off, but Jadakiss brought up regarding the paying homage conversation. And he brought up Jelly Roll, who was a trap country singer, versus Tim McGraw. You know what I mean? Because in country music, and that's a good analogy, country music, like those that listen to country music listeners, you know what I mean? They may listen to the new school artists or the new school country singers like a Morgan Wallen, but they know Morgan Wallen, as great as he is, they're not going to put him over a Garth Brooks. They're not going to put him over a Tim McGraw or a Reba McEntire or what have you. They know who their legends are, and they still listen and uphold their legends to another level. Younger generation hip-hop fans don't do that. And that's the real disconnect that I spoke about in my previous video with that 22-year-old hip-hop fan, and Jadakiss and Fat Joe are kind of speaking to in this one. But what do you think? Jim Jones kind of got exposed on this one. But what do you feel? You think Jim Jones is on the level of Nas? Let me know. Where do you think Jim Jones ranks in hip-hop history, in New York rap history? You know what I mean? He's always been a mid-tier kind of New York rapper to me, like a third-tier rapper. He's not on Jadakiss level. He's not on Fab's level. He's not on Styles level. I don't think he's on Fat Joe's level. Maybe like a Memphis Bleak, maybe. That's maybe one of the comparisons I could bring, but I would even say that. I would even rival to say Memphis Bleak has more bangers than he does. Hold on, let me go and see that. Let me see Memphis Bleak Billboard history real quick. Let's just pull that up. Do a little Google is your friend exercise here with Memphis Bleak. Memphis Bleak. Billboard. All right, let's see now. Hold on a minute. Let me see. This is not the Billboard hits, but actually Memphis Bleak has 2 gold albums. Okay, 2 gold albums. And he's got 1, to two songs that charted in the Billboard Top 100. So that's more comparative with Memphis Bleak. Hold on a minute. No, hold on. Memphis Bleak has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He's got 5. So even Memphis Bleak beats Jim Jones in the end of the day. But I think that's more of a comparison or what have you as far as where Jim Jones lines up in New York hip hop and hip hop history. And Memphis Bleak was a guy that I liked at one time too. He was a very good, dope MC. But what do you think? Jim Jones, where does he line up? Is he overrated to y'all? Or is Jim Jones, does he bring up kind of a relevant point with this, with Nas? Or is he trying to kind of switch the narrative to turn it on, well, it's this new generation of hip hop fans disconnecting from Nas rather than actually saying Jim Jones is better than Nas? That's an interesting thing. Very interesting debate. What do y'all think? Jim Jones, do you think he has a point? Make sure you like, share, and subscribe. Tell me in your comments what you think. Jim Jones, does he have a point comparing himself to Nas and other notable MCs? All right. With that, hope you enjoy your holiday, and I'll talk to y'all later. All right. Peace.